again, click all the button for my clerk, please call your
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Aldrich.
Present.
Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
so thanks.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Why do we have it?
We have 3 present. We do not have a quorum.
Madam Clerk, would you mind checking with the folks online? I know we had Alderwoman Boyd and Alderwoman Schweitzer here. There may be some technical difficulties.
Whoever.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
We are calling roll call. Alderwoman Schweitzer, can you hear us?
I'm texting her. I think she can.
Is she on mute from the room?
Hey guys, I said before the meeting started that I couldn't hear you all. So no, we still can't hear you on the computer.
How about now?
Hear us now?
I don't think Alderman Boyd can hear you either.
I put that in it.
Yeah. What are you trying to tell you guys?
It looks like so. Is the room on? One moment.
Can you hear this?
You all are on mute, Karen. They have you all on mute.
Yeah, I think it's something that needs to be done in the little console over by the STL That's how they've done it before when they've had this issue.
Thanks, Anne.
I got you. We're next to each other online.
Right.
Can you hear now?
Yes, thank you.
Good. All right, what you got?
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will accept, first order of business is the approval of the minutes from Tuesday, February 6, 2024. I will accept a motion on the approval of the minutes.
So move.
Move that we approve the minutes from February 6, 2024. Madam Clerk, would you please call? I think we had a first from the 14th and second from the 7th.
Yes.
Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Spencer.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion.
Okay, we approved the minutes from February 6th. Next item of business, we have 2 board bills before us today. We're going to take these out of order. We're going to start with item number 2, which is board bill number 234. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, you are recognized on board bill 234.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee members. Madam Clerk, can you read the summary for Board Bill 234?
Board Bill Number 234, introduced by Alderwoman Shameen Clark Hubbard, co-sponsors President Megan Green, an ordinance adding one new section to ordinance number 62124, which added sections pertains to requirements for bidders for service contracts with the city for janitorial and security services, and containing a severability clause and effective date clause.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. So here again, this is something that I know we sometimes think we shouldn't even have to legislate stuff like this, right? But we do, and we want to codify and make sure that first and foremost, the citizens, the constituents in the city of St. Louis see where we lie our values and our advocacy here down at the Board of Aldermen. And I would like to thank, of course, the amazing people that don't need any introduction that are behind me and their team, and the countless hours work that volunteering that they do on behalf of not themselves, but others. And then the work that they did with our mayor's administration to get to a place here where we can set this parameter to make sure that we have best practices in our hiring. So with that, I don't know if you have questions for me prior to letting the speaker speak, or we can let them speak. It's up to you.
I think we'll take your, if you want to have speakers speak first, maybe we'll have a full presentation and then we can take questions from the committee.
Great.
Did you have, so we don't necessarily need to have, if you have speakers for the presentation piece, they don't,
They're all here from the public. They're all signed up. So no specific speaker for me, but they're here for the public and they would like to speak. And they've signed up on the sheet, will need to be sworn in.
okay, so are they part of, they're not part of the presentation necessarily? Did you want to go over any more specifics of the bill before we turn it over to general public comments?
I don't need to, but if you all need to, yes, you're the chairwoman, Madam Chair. So.
Okay, maybe we could take questions on the bill first, and then we can maybe, I usually like to proceed with a full presentation of the bill, have questions, and then turn it over.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, Madam Chairwoman. So for me, since this bill and the spirit and the heart of this bill is to advocate for other people, I'm going to have the speakers as part of my formal presentation the way that you would like to run it. So I would love to be able to let them speak first and then we address questions.
Okay, and we can take them in order of they signed up, or did you have a preference?
No, whatever they say.
I only have one person who signed up.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please call them to the stand?
I have Mr. Jamerson Ramirez from SEIU Local 1. He lives on...
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you so much. Bless you. Good morning. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on this legislation this morning. SEIU Local 1 is pleased and proud to support this legislation being discussed today. It's our firm belief that when workers are treated with dignity and respect, paid fairly and equitably, the city itself prospers. This legislation addressing city contracts for janitorial and security services represents another opportunity for the city to take the lead in this regional economy by showing employers across industries how services can continue to be delivered reliably without cutting corners at the expense of workers. Procurement criteria that emphasizes lowest cost above all else is misguided, for there may be a high price to pay for contracting with the lowest bidder. After all, rock bottom prices often go hand in hand with rock bottom quality. Poor quality services can be expensive to deal with over the long run, and this high price is ultimately shouldered by taxpayers. And to add insult to injury, many of these same burdened taxpayers are the workers themselves. The reality is that the greatest value on a contract is obtained when the city does business with responsible companies that treat their workers not as cogs in a profit-driven machine, but essential partners in a worthwhile enterprise. Responsible companies that invest in their workers and have a strong quality record are worth the investment of the city. This bill ensures that property quality controls are put into place during the critical period of the bidding process to identify and select not simply the lowest bidder, but the most responsible bidder. It is our most earnest hope that this committee approve this bill with a due pass recommendation so that quality work by quality workers continue to serve the best interest of the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was informed that one of the public speakers was not able to attend, so we want to still lift them up and again, lift the voices up here that are here in their presence, which is just as loud as their voices. So again, this is something you don't think you have to legislate, but you do want to codify. And then we worked with the mayor's administration to get it to where it is now. Again, I'm always proud of that. Responsible is the big word, but in other departments here in the city of St. Louis, you know, when we take the lowest bidders, the products we get are sometimes reflective of that. And so I did talk to some other department heads that said, even though we do look at the lowest bidder, we definitely would stand in solidarity with it being a responsible bidder and holding them accountable for that. And then this is just, again, hey, I wish I had a wand for every entity and every business and every organization in the world to make sure that they have responsible practices like this. But we don't. Our purview is the city of St. Louis. Our purview is our employees and here at the city of St. Louis. And I think, again, that this sends a message to them from us at the Board of Aldermen that we value them, that we care about how they will be treated, and that they have a strong voice down at the Board of Aldermen to work on their behalf. So with that, I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. I have some general questions. I mean, with just for the general knowledge of the public and for the committee here, what the bill does. So while the summary kind of points to addressing determining the lowest responsible bidders. So in the bill itself, it requires some disclosures. Can you walk us through just kind of like what this actually means as far as,
Tell me which section you're on. So I can go
well,
back.
I guess I'm just looking for like a general, I think you're spot on with, with regards to lowest bids, not necessarily being the best product, and certainly encourages paying workers low wages and stripping out good quality services that we can and should be providing our citizens. Does this board bill allow for the city to accept non-lowest bids, or what?
Yeah.
What?
I don't think it stops that. I think the weight should be put in the word responsible. And that's why the information that has to be afforded to the Board of Public Service is in here and clarified in here. And I don't know if that's...
So in other words, what this bill is doing is requiring that the bidders provide additional information to the Board of Public Service so they can be determined whether or not that bid is a responsible bid or not.
Yeah, and would you like me to read off those for the public?
So, well, I was kind of looking through them. You're welcome to. I guess I was just trying to kind of holistic for what we're doing here. We're still requiring the lowest bid by putting in the word responsible and allowing for the Board of Public Service to determine which of those bids are responsible by requiring them to provide additional information.
Yeah, and I think putting requiring in front of requiring the lowest, I don't think that's the spirit of this bill. I think more the weight is in the responsible, because that's what we're trying to prevent when we have the lowest bidders and just accept the lowest bidders. Sometimes that's the product we get.
That's right. So currently we're required to accept the lowest bid, correct? That's the way I understand it. And this is saying that we're allowing for responsibility to be a part of that decision.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so in part of the disclosure, we're talking about disclosing.
You want to read them? You want me to read them for the public?
Do you mind just kind of going through just so we get a feel for what it is we're looking for from bidders?
Absolutely. A copy of the Missouri, this is on page 4, a copy of the Missouri Secretary of State's online records show that a bidder has a current report or file or is authorized to transact business in the state of Missouri. If the bidder is an individual, sole proprietor, or partnership, this subsection shall not apply. Documents evidencing current registration with the Missouri Department of Revenue if the bidder has employees. Documents evidencing current registration with the Missouri Department of Employment Security if bidder has employees. Disclosure of any tax liens or tax delinquencies against the bidder within the past 5 years. We've been working across the board on that information in other areas. Disclosure of any liens or delinquencies associated with unpaid unemployment contributions against the bidder within the past 5 years. Again, we are talking about people being responsible, fiduciary responsible in other areas, so I don't see why we wouldn't talk about that for our employees. Disclosure of any bankruptcy, not our employees, their employers. Disclosure of any bankruptcy proceedings in which the bidder was a debtor within the past 5 years, a copy of any final judgment against the bidder that has not been satisfied at the time of the bid, disclosure of any criminal conviction or criminal indictments involving the bidder or its officers, directors, owners, or managerial employees within the past 5 years relating to the performance of the contract, the payment of wages, the provision of benefits, or an offense of which an essential element is fraud or misrepresentation. A statement that all employees are covered under a current workers' compensation insurance. Again, we're talking about that across the board. Why not for this one as well? Documentation for general liability insurance, a copy of the bidder's substance abuse policies that applies to workers, a copy of the bidder's affirmative action plan or policy, documentation relating to any violations of state, federal laws relating to the workplace discrimination, such as Missouri Human Rights Act, Title VII, Health and Safety, including OSHA and ERISA, wage and hours such as FLSA and the Service Contracts Act, and labor laws such as NLRA within the past 5 years, including any settlement or lawsuit or complaint or any findings by any government authority or court. Bidder shall also provide notice of any ongoing lawsuit or investigation is not by itself or based on rejected a bill, basis for a rejected bid. A statement with the individuals who perform on behalf of the work of the bidder and are properly classified as its employee under applicable state and federal law. Documents evidencing any professional or trade license required by law or ordinance for the trade or specialty area which the bidder is seeking a contract. Additionally, the bidder must disclose any suspension or revocation of such license within 5 years. Any other information or documentation which may be deemed relevant for assessing the bidder's business integrity, finance expertise, qualifications, experience, performance record, and compliance with the law. And if the failure to provide any of this information, notwithstanding in this ordinance, I'm not going to read out through it, but it would be absent a compelling reason, failure to provide this bidder a time to provide this information, documentation, and certification set forth in this section shall result in the rejection of this bid. So when you're talking about a bidder being responsible, if they can't pass all of that, whether it's the lowest one or not, I think that us, again, as a city, should hold them accountable and play our part in making sure that the city shares in that. And again, the work that was done to have this consensus and this shared voice on this, I'm proud of, because we did go back and forth a couple of times with the mayor's administration, which, you know, and with BPS, who actually awards these contracts. And I did hear from other, again, entities that reached out just in support of this, even though they don't have necessarily any role in applying or awarding these bidders. They think that this is a good step forward, and they actually want to see it go a little further for some other entities.
Thank you, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. In order of seniority, Alderwoman Vice Chair, Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you all for
Alderwoman Boyd, you're on mute.
I hate these things. I really do. I'm just telling y'all. I guess I appreciate SEIU, working with us in regards to this. I guess my question is, I'm hearing all these qualifications for the people that are bidding for contracts, but we don't already have those qualifications or criteria in place. Is this something new the city is starting? Because it seems, I guess, from coming from the corporate world, the things that I'm hearing should automatically be in place. So we don't have that in place already.
Alderwoman Boyd, can you repeat that question? This is I was kind of looking up that myself. We're amending with ordinance a bill.
Right. So what I'm asking the sponsor is, these things that she's calling off, none of this is in place with us as a city in regards to guidelines for people to bid on these contracts. And so that's one question I have.
Okay, that's a great question, Alderwoman. No, that's why we're in an effort to do this now, to make sure that we codify and put these in place on behalf of our employees here at the city of St. Louis.
So I guess and so what you're answering is none of this is in place. This is something we're just starting to do.
I don't know if you want. The things that are will be codified in this legislation through the work between us as the Board of Aldermen, the Mayor's Office, BPS, and our Supply Commissioner are not in place right now for our janitor and security workers.
If I may,
So
I think one of the things that the Alderwoman was alluding to was that we don't necessarily have to codify this. BPS could, to your point, Alderwoman, be asking for this information. Just because it's not codified now doesn't mean that there hasn't been some of this from the Supply Commissioner or from some of the departments requesting some of this. It just hasn't been a required request. And so codifying this makes it applicable to all applicants and adds a level of consistency to that may or may not be in place right now. It's not to say we haven't been asking for any of this information, because to your point, it would be sort of egregious if we hadn't been ever asking for any of this information. It seems like it should be part and parcel of kind of doing business with the city, and it may have been taking place to some extent or even to full extent, but it wasn't required before now. Is that
okay? It's also echoed through the Supply Commissioner as well.
And so that's just real interesting. A city that's over 200 years old, and we've never enforced this across the board. So that's really just kind of crazy to me. And then the other piece is, did we put in there about sexual harassment? Is this something that the bidders should show that they have a policy in place in regards to sexual harassment on the job? Because we do know that's a federal law. And so if a man or woman comes to their supervisor and say, I've been sexually harassed, that's an immediate reporting, and they have to go through the process. So that company should have a policy in place in regards to that.
I'm not sure that specific offense is written out in here, but I do think that some of the other documentation should reflect that. What you're asking for, especially, and I'm looking for it because I remember when I read it.
And so the way society is today, I encourage that to be in that legislation, because we need to make sure all employees are protected, contracted, or city employees in regards to that. And I'm pretty sure the city does have a policy with that, but I would feel comfortable if that bidder has that also in there. And then, and I guess what I keep hearing, because the lowest bid, and people need to understand, lowest isn't always better because you get what you pay for, but that kind of puts a damper on those employees because it doesn't, to me, it's not justifying them to be paid a substantial salary in regards to those positions, because those positions are always looked at as the low man on the totem pole, and so they're the afterthought, and I don't want that to happen to anybody that's in those positions. I want them to be looked at in a meaningful salary where they can take care of their family to some kind of extent. So that's why I was asking, do you have a staff ratio? Because we continuously, and I don't know if people understand that I do, they'll continuously give you more and have less staff. And so I don't think that's a good fit, for us as employers.
All right, thank you, and thank you for your comments. What I will say, I would think that the specific thing that you're speaking about as it relates to the offense would fall up under notice of any ongoing lawsuit or investigation or such subjects. The initiation of a lawsuit or investigation is not by itself a basis for rejection of a bid, but it will be noticed. And so I do think that that on top of the Human Rights Act, on top of some of the other places, would definitely capture the specific offense that you spoke about. And thank you for your wisdom and your guidance from, like you said, from the corporate world as we're down here navigating this.
Right, and I'm not contradicting what you're saying, but we have to be very careful because that is a very devastating law for the federal government in regards to sexual harassment. And so I feel more comfortable if it's specified. I don't want it looped up with everything. I want it specified because you have to be careful and protect people. So I'm just, that's just my caution that I'm bringing to you. But I thought it was in the RFQs and RFPs that these are what you're saying, it should be in there. But that's why I said, if it's not, we're not good as a city, not enforcing this across the board. This is something that needs to be focused on across the board to make sure what SEIU it should be for anybody should be asking for these things. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next would be Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this bill, and I'm so excited to support it today. We need to put things into place that allow these sort of considerations to be taken into account. I've read through the bill. I think I understand how it would work and how the determination would be made and how this criteria would fit in to what decisions are being made when a contractor is chosen. So I really appreciate the bill, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman Saunier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a great bill. I was reading through it and I had the same surprise actually as Alderwoman Boyd. I was like, oh, I think you would assume, that's why you said it's crazy that we have to legislate this, because I think you would assume that some of these standards are already in practice. And then I did actually have some conversation with folks in departments, and they basically were like, some of them we do, but of course it always helps to put it as an actual legal standard, to put it into writing and put it onto paper. And I think that's the intention of your bill, to make sure that what we're already doing is practice. And if there's any standards that we can put into place to help, folks who are going to be doing this work in our city, to put those in place. And I also do like Alderwoman Boyd's point around just like the sexual harassment piece, and if there's any language there, I think that would be a conversation I would be happy to have with you or her, to see if there is something additional that we can add that everybody is comfortable with, to kind of catch that, because I think one of the unfortunate things too is when you do have employees that do the hard work of cleaning, they're often taken advantage of and often exploited, and people think, well, I can get away with violating this person, and they don't have the power to stand up for themselves. So I would support that. But also, I think this is a great bill. I would like to be added as co-sponsor. I want to thank you, Alderwoman, for doing the work of bringing the departments together and finding the grounds that work for all of us.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, for being here, and our expert witness from SEIU and all the members out in the audience, which is really not the audience, but on the other side of the table, for being here. I just want to echo a lot of the sentiments from my colleague. I want to commend Alderwoman Clark Hubbard for her leadership on this. Instead of, sometimes down here we just do legislation that we think is a good idea, but for you to bring all stakeholders together, from the mayor's office and the individuals who are actually impacted by it, to make sure that it is right and not just words on the paper. I want to commend you on your leadership. And like Alderwoman Sonia said, I think it's always good to codify it. I don't think maybe BPS or other departments was not doing this, but if it isn't on paper and it's not an ordinance, maybe they may forget one of these things. So just to make sure we double down and codify into law to make sure a practice and policy for the city of St. Louis, I think is a great thing. And Madam Clerk, please add me as a co-sponsor as well.
Noted.
Thank you, Alderman Aldridge. I just had a couple of quick technical questions. I was trying to understand, I had the same questions as Alderwoman Boyd, thinking through whether, why we weren't doing this before. And I had the opportunity to look up the ordinance 62124 that we're amending here. Have we already amended that ordinance once? That was passed in 2022. The reason I'm asking is this bill calls for adding section 9 to that ordinance, but I only see 6 sections here in this ordinance. Just want to make sure that we've got the technicalities correct.
I'll check into that.
Okay.
Let me check into that.
Okay. And then I want to uplift Alderwoman Boyd's concern about sexual discrimination or gender discrimination or anything of that nature. And it might be worthwhile. I think I'd be willing to just entertain through this week before we get to hearing it on the full board, the concept of maybe considering adding that to the language. But I would take your leadership on that, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and kind of vetting that through the process.
I don't mind going over, since you have another bill here, holding it over and checking into that, and then coming back after you're with this other bill.
What I was thinking could maybe make sense with regards to that, adding before section 14, we have the disclosure of the 2 policies right above that, with regards to affirmative action and substance abuse policies. And it may make sense to also require a policy related to sexual discrimination, and with regards to gender or other identifications.
Yeah, I'm gonna go, since we have the time, since you have another bill that's here, and since you offered, I would love the opportunity to hold this in committee now while you work on it, and I can go across and work on seeing if it's not already, if I can explain to you where I thought it was already in here that you're not comfortable with, and Alderwoman Boyd's not comfortable with, so we can work around that and get an amendment in.
Okay, I am comfortable taking a vote right now and moving this forward, and then taking a look at that, and then that way we can have this heard today, and then if that one little tweak makes it stronger, I think we can handle that on the floor, if that's okay with you, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and then that way we're not sort of waiting to see how the next bill goes.
You just know how much I love working in committee. I do. I really love working in committee. I do believe that that's where this work happens, and I know how things can go awry on the floor. And here is, I mean, if you're amenable to doing that, I want to do whatever you're comfortable with your committee. But if I had the time and if we could pull it together, I would like the opportunity to do that in committee while you're working on while you're hearing Alderwoman Tyus's bill. And if it doesn't come to fruition by then I appreciate your, again, the opportunity to move it and then do it on the floor.
Okay, if you don't mind, given that I think one of my concerns is losing quorum. I know Alderwoman Spicer has a hard stop at 11:25. So what I want to do, maybe we could put a hard stop here on taking a look at this issue of 11:15. And just see if we can vet that quickly, and then we'll kind of reconvene at that time once we kind of started the process on the next bill. Is that okay with you?
As long as it's not conflicting with Alderwoman Tyus's time on her bill, whatever that means. I don't want to make sure what you're saying about the hard stop on mine. I don't want to have to interrupt her to do this. So if it doesn't work out, then at the end, if we can just do the vote and to your point, and then we can do it on the floor. But while I'm here, it's my job. It's our job. I would rather go ahead and try to take advantage of the time.
Sure. What I just want to make sure we don't do it tomorrow. So if we could work on a solution in the next half an hour,
Yeah.
we'll make sure that I want to make sure we get this voted on today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
Instead of putting a
it.
hold on it
I do
entirely.
because I hold a lot of value in the committee hearing,
And I
think
wanna-
that's where this work happens.
I want to commend your work on it, and also I really strongly agree with the work being done in committee. It's a process perspective. It makes the most sense to do it that way. So I really appreciate your consistency and adherence to that policy, and as a matter of procedure. Okay,
Thank you.
So with that, I am going to call on Alderwoman Tyus on Board Bill 213.
Yeah.
Say that again. She's printing off documents. With that, I'll take a 2-minute recess. All right, I'd like to call the Budget and Public Employees meeting back to order.
Do you already have it? Thanks. Is that something new, Messiah?
Okay,
Something new? Not this, is it? Yes. No, it's not that.
we're taking, Madam Clerk, we had Board Bill 234 before us. I'd like to put now, putting aside Board Bill 234, I'd like to consider Board Bill 213. Do we have to have a motion to table to put that aside, or can we, since we haven't had any action on 234, we can just now consider 213? Okay, just wanted to make sure we were in line with our new rules. Alderwoman Tyus, you're recognized on Board Bill 213.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Board Bill 213 is a board bill that seeks to repeal an ordinance number 65094, which we did back in 2000. We being the Board of Aldermen, I was here, in which we put an exemption on income received by a person in the form of or relating to stock options, performance shares, performance-based stocks, and incentives. It's real interesting how that happened. It happened right after we had won a lawsuit, and I just gave you a copy of the law. Ralston Purina did not want to pay on stock options, and so they took the city of St. Louis to court. It was a several-year hearing in which Ronald Leggett was the collector of revenue, and he fought and won the lawsuit. After he won the lawsuit, the alderwoman from the 28th Ward, and it's a lot of stuff if you go out there. In fact, I'm making copies. I don't want to really put it into the record about what happened, but the thing of it is RCGA and other people came and told us we need an exemption. It's only going to be $366,000. And that's why I gave you a bullet point of what happened and that's all it would cost the city. Well, that wasn't quite right. So what happened was after winning the lawsuit and after the alderwoman from the 28th Ward introduced a board bill to exempt this out, Ralston Purina came back and they had people who had stock options in $100 and something million. And so with that happening, the city ended up losing, it was $118 million of stock option. The city didn't lose $366,000 as had been promised by RCGA. And you can look at, which is the bullet point on the second page highlighted. It said Board Bill 172 was supported by RCGA, who estimated that the exemption of dividends and stock options would cost the city only about $350,000. and it was repeated by several co-sponsors in the press and on the floor of the Board of Aldermen. I know this because I was there, and I was one of 4 alder people then that did not vote for this because I thought that was very unfair that we put earnings tax on people at that time making $5 and $6 an hour, but we were exempting out dividends. This actually board bill doesn't help me because I get dividends. I think that is really unfair that I would have an exemption on dividends, but people who are barely making a living do have to pay earnings tax. The 4 people who voted no at that time was the 16th Ward Alderman, and I think he was the president at the time, also was 16th Ward Alderman Jim Shrewsbury, who sent me a note saying, "Yay, Sharon, glad you haven't forgotten that." Also, Stephen Conway of the 8th Ward voted no. Myself, the 3 lawyers on the board voted no, and our clerk, Terry Kennedy. We were the 4 no's, and said we didn't believe the numbers. They didn't make sense. And sure enough, as soon as we passed it and it was passed into law, the numbers didn't make sense. I actually, like I said, I'm having you made copies. The Riverfront Times did extensive coverage of this because it was just so way out of line with what had been said. So that has always been like a burr. That's been something that bothered me because we should make sure, can you give that in? Right, okay. We should make sure that everybody is paying their fair share of taxes, especially the earnings tax, which we know that there's a very famous person out there who doesn't want us to have the earnings tax, and he actually helped sponsor Proposition A back. And when was this? I can't remember it was in 2010. He helped sponsor Proposition A, which means that every 5 years, Kansas City and St. Louis have to come back and people have to vote to reauthorize our earnings tax. Our earnings tax is a very big part of our city's budget. It's estimated to be about 1/3. It brings in more than our property tax and other revenue. And so to me, every bit that we can get in should be coming in. When I started investigating how much money we had actually lost with this bill, it came into several millions and millions, and we don't really know how much. Nobody could give me a number, but we know for sure $177 million were lost when they told us it was only going to be $350,000. And that's been 23 years we've had this exemption, and I seek to repeal it because there's no reason to have it if we, the city, are having such problems with budgets. And they also told us that if we had this would bring in all the .com, and 10 years or so, .coms would be all over the city of St. Louis. None of what was promoted to us was true. And as I said before, the 3 attorneys on the board, and Stephen Conway also is a certified public accountant, did not believe it. And so we voted no. And every year I've tried to have a hearing, but of course, the people who were involved in it, the mayor, Francis Slay, was not going to sign it if it could have got passed. And then Lyda Crewson became the mayor. So this is the first time I thought I at least had an opportunity for people to hear that that's not fair and there's no reason to exempt this. And just the fact that you told us it was only going to cost us $355,000 and it was covered in everything, and then it cost us $177 million, $0.77 million is ridiculous. And that's also, the Post-Dispatch came back in January of 2001 and had a whole story about that these stock options were already there. So it seems like they were holding things back from us. We have been fooled, and I don't see any reason why we should be exempting certain people from paying taxes on their dividends. Kansas City never took the dividends out of their revenue stream. They've continued to do it all these years, and we're the only ones that did it, and there's no reason to do it at all. And that's why I seek to pass Board Bill 213 out, and am open to questions.
Thank you, Alderwoman Tyus. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. First, Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Alderwoman Tyus, for bringing this to our attention. And I guess my question was, I know that we're fighting right now for the earnings tax up in Jefferson City. So how do you think this will impact us if we win that fight, how this will impact us as a city and increasing our, because what I'm hearing is it's going to increase our revenue. Am I correct?
I'm hoping that it will, and I think it will impact us in that it will show Jefferson City we are serious about, we need our earning tax. The person who wants to get rid of it and the people who are in the state, if you take a third of the city's budget away, we're dead in the water. So we should not be having exemptions such as this that give people who make a little bit more money or a lot more money an exemption. As I said, I get dividends. I think it is unfair that I should not have to pay taxes on dividends.
Okay, thank you, because I'm still trying to comprehend and learn this part. And so that's why, I'm asked these questions, because it just seems like I'm constantly learning something new from you in regards to the numbers. So that's why I asked. So thank you so much for that.
We also, I would like to add, have several more exemptions that are right along this line. This was the most egregious, but over the years, people have put little things in, exempting out people, just like when we talk about the tax abatement now, and people say, well, we want the tax abatement to stop. North St. Louis, I have maps. North St. Louis didn't get tax abatement, very small amount. Right. The tax abatements was in the 28th Ward, the 17th Ward, the 6th Ward, the 7th Ward, the 8th Ward. I can tell you, and in fact, a very good article was done by the Post-Dispatch when I first became an alderperson in '91, showing how the city gave all that tax abatement. Now, when we come back to try to clean it up, we're trying to treat all the different communities and neighborhoods the same, when in fact, there are certain neighborhoods were built on tax abatement at the expense of our schools. And this is what's happening to me with this earnings tax. If we are serious about that, we want our earnings tax to remain, to me, this is a good way to send us a message to Jefferson City, is that, look, we're not exempting out anyone. Everybody has to pay their fair share of taxes.
And I agree with you 210%. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. This bill is really interesting, and I appreciate the spirit of it a lot. And I'm interested in knowing more about what the budget director, the collector of revenue, the administration has to say about the bill. Are any of them there or consulted about the bill or planning on speaking on the bill?
None of them are there because the dollar signs, first of all, like I said, to me, if I didn't bring them in here because everybody goes scrambling. Paul Payne would tell you just the numbers right here that they got the 100. I don't know if you got the bullet points that I had. I told him to put it on the drive. That you would tell me that it's only going to cost $350,000, and it cost $1.77 million just on one transaction. That is wrong. That is not correct. Somebody omitted facts. I didn't write these stories. They've been in the Post-Dispatch and the Riverfront Times. I don't know why anybody would have any problems with saying we got a bad deal. If I could go back, and just to give you an example, I voted no on the stadium deal because I said that loophole that was in there that allowed them to move was not a good deal. If we could go back, I would hope the people would say, hey, she's right. Let's not put that loophole in here. So there's no reason for the budget director of anybody to be against this. But if you want to, this doesn't have to be voted out because I'll bring it back next term and I'll bring them all there. But what I did over the years was try to get a fixed number of how much money we had lost by having this, because I've introduced resolutions and things about this before, knowing that it was not go anyplace because the people who participated in it were the mayors. In fact, one of them got a free trip to Ireland, and all of that has been written about. So there's no reason for any budget director who is really being conscious of our budget not to say this is a good idea. I don't understand why the mayor or anybody else, if they were opposed to it, not one of them reached out to me and said, hey, you want to have a conversation? Because I have kept a record for all these years because I was just so appalled that we were fooled like that. at some point, we're going to have to start sending messages to people that when you lie to the Board of Aldermen and to the city, that we don't take that laying down and that we have to do something about that. So if that's something that you have a problem, I'm not trying to rush this bill. I want to bring this before this committee, and I want to bring it before this Board of Aldermen. People hopefully are fair about everybody paying their fair share of taxes. I am very serious about it. So I'm bringing a bill that doesn't help me, that hurts me.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I really appreciate that and the openness to having more discussions on it. I think that it's, we have to have discussions about the earnings tax in St. Louis. I mean, if we don't, everyone else is going to keep talking about it. So we should probably be part of those conversations and be having those conversations in committee. So I would appreciate holding the bill today, having more time. I'd love to work with you on it if you have any interest in that, and have it come back before us next session. And I really appreciate you thinking about this and bringing this bill forward. That's all my questions today.
I want to say I don't think there's much to work on, okay? If I tell you I'm selling you a car and this car is brand new and this car is going to last for the next 15 years and that car breaks down the first day you get it, that was not true. So like, as I said before, I'm not trying to push because I know people are all, there's all these people doing all of this stuff in the background. And I'm not saying you who is like, oh, we don't want to do that. But to me, we're sending a bad message to the people who want to take our earnings tax when we don't find every loophole there is, because I'm going to bring 3 more, okay? And they're all for wealthy people. And either we are standing on that we need our earning tax and everybody has to do it, or we are not. And if we keep sending the wrong message, one of these days we're not going to have it, and it's going to be a catastrophe. And so I'm not pushing if people are not comfortable. I want you to read all what I provided you. I didn't write any of those articles. They did the research. You could check with anybody. I just want this committee to know you're the first one that actually, I want to thank the chair, that had a hearing, because everybody ran from it. But I do understand, because the last mayor was the sponsor. When you read that stuff in the Riverfront Times, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And the other mayor sponsored not only that bill, helped co-sponsor that bill, but also several more. And the last president of the board also was a co-sponsor. And none of them, I want them to come and stand up and explain how you get an estimate of $350,000 and you actually lose $1.77 million in one deal. Wow. That's not right to me.
Yep. Alderwoman Schweitzer. Okay, so let's move on to Alderwoman Saulnier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Alderwoman Tyus.
Good morning.
I think this is one of those times where I'm like, if I had a chance to talk to her more offline, we would really have so much in common, because I actually literally have a draft of a bill that has the same intention. I was very curious when I first joined in exploring all the things that, I'm very interested in who has to pay their fair share and who doesn't, because often we have no problem putting all the taxes and fines and fees on people with lower incomes. But then when you get to folks with more wealth and resources, their stuff is much lower. And so I actually had a draft and actually had a conversation with our budget director, myself, about the possibility of, literally, I had a draft, the bill and everything, and it would have been something that I would have done next session. And I agree with not just the spirit of this bill, but I would agree that this bill is the right thing to do. I think that we need to end our times of having one set of rules for one group of people and a different set of rules for another group of people. If it's good for one group, then it needs to be good for all of us. If everyday hard workers like the janitors who are just here have to pay their share of the earnings tax, then everybody else should have to pay their fair share of earnings tax too. It's really not, a radical concept, but I do think some of the things that you're talking about, obviously there's reasons, but at the end of the day, we should think about this bill. And I think the first time it passed, it should have been counted. But if it wasn't going to be counted then, and we didn't have the political win to do it then, we should now, because the interesting thing about what is at the state is there's obviously several different versions of the earning tax. And so we will lose, various different amounts depending on what version goes through. But there is a version, for example, that does the just work from home tax. And so this bill could be something that could help us supplement the loss that comes in that way. And so I don't really understand why any of us, a third of our budget is up, or if not a third less, would be turning down any, revenue stream when we know that we've exempted something, when we know that, folks who make $12 an hour, they got to pay their 1%. So folks who are doing this type of industry and business should do it too. So I would add myself as co-sponsor. Whenever you decide to take this for a vote, you have my vote. And because I've been following what's happening at the state, and because I'm very interested in this, I've had, all my conversations with the parties. And I wouldn't say that the conversations I had, people were opposed. I think people were just hesitant, and I think people are often hesitant to change the rules and to put new standards in place. But I think that we have to change the rules, and we have to apply standards, across the board. And obviously people have their different reasons for not supporting it, but I support this. I don't need to have any outside conversations with anyone else, and I think this is the right thing to do. And so, Madam Clerk, please add me as sponsor. And like I said, whenever you do take this vote, you have a yes from me.
So I want to say, we're not changing the rules. We're putting back the rules to where it was. The people who did this changed the rules. That was what we were so appalled about, okay? And I'm telling you again, the 3 attorneys, our clerk, who's the 18th Ward, and then Stephen Conway is both an attorney and a CPA. None of us agreed with it that it was only going to be $350,000. Now, what Ralston knew is that they already were prepared to do this stock option. So they lost the case actually in July, June, something like that. And then here comes a board bill. After you just lost the case, the city spent a lot of money to defend our right to collect it. Then you come with a board bill a few months later and do what the court said we didn't have to do. That makes no sense to me. If we're really saying that's important to do it, so I don't call what I'm doing. All I'm doing is saying repeal what we did. I'm not saying change anything else. We did something that was wrong. The same way we did something was wrong when we left that exemption and loophole in for the Rams to move. If we did not have a stadium that was the same as stadiums 20 years or 12 years in the future, that was never going to be. That's like telling someone, if you don't have the same iPhone from 12 years ago, then I'll get you a new one. Well, you might as well get your money out and get a new one, because you're not going to have the same iPhone, okay? It's not going to be the same. So the reason why they like it is because people get dividends, and so that's personal. I told you already, I get dividends. But that shouldn't be a reason that I shouldn't pay for those dividends. And you're talking about I actually helped sponsor us and get the, when is this back? When the president first got here, we sponsored and got a bill to support raising the minimum wage. We actually got it passed on a trick that I knew how to do. And then when we actually had the people getting paid, Jefferson City came and took the money. I've never seen this before in my 30 years in politics. They took it back and basically took back the money. That's ridiculous, okay? I will give this to our person who does finance and stuff. There is nothing that I'm doing different. It simply says repeal what we did that was wrong. That's all it says.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and thank you, Alderwoman Tyus, for being here. And not just being here, but as a young kid say, providing receipts on what you're talking about. And I also think this is a something that we definitely need to be talking about. If one thing we know is our earnings tax is in some type of limbo, and like you say, Jefferson City constantly is attacking that and constantly attacking St. Louis in so many ways. But I think we had a spot that this time with the earnings tax that it actually could fall through. And as you said, the earnings tax is such a big impact on our budget. Is I think what 33%, 1/3 or something like that of our budget. So any dollars, any pennies, any coins we can scrape up, we need to. I would, ideally be in support of it because I don't understand coming from, we speaking about the janitors, coming from SEIU with the Fight for 15 campaign. I know exactly how the ones at the bottom totem pole always are the ones that get left out of the conversation, and then going to work with SEIU and working on the adjunct campaign of our adjunct teachers working in these universities where they're getting not just billions of dollars, but currently, they don't pay certain taxes and they actually live in the city of or they have an institution in St. I would just love to have, and I always appreciate your history. We agree, disagree, but one thing I can say, you do have a lot of history that I never push back on, and always love to learn some of these things from you when it comes to the forefront, even if it's in the committee on the floor. Just love to learn what the financial impact would be if we do this, because money coming back. Because if we do this, which I'm all in support, if we don't know how much dollars coming back, as you brought up on the floor, you know, they better have your money, right? And sometimes if we don't know what those dollars are, those dollars can be funneled any type of way. So I would love to hear directly from, I want to call it not the, I'd love to hear directly from the director to say, if we do this, how much money would that bring back? So we can know exactly how many pennies and coins we'll be getting, even if it's an estimate amount, right? How much we'll be getting back, so that we can make every dollar is accounted for, and some of that money don't get lost somehow in all these different tunnels and funnels and all that. But in concept of it, I also 110% in support of it. I think this board is, can't speak for the old board, as you was talking about, interesting as you was talking about you and Conway agreeing. I know y'all had y'all squabble, but when you can have people come from different walks of life and usually not always on the same side, but then you read something like this on the same side, like, oh, it's something that really was a problem. So I know I would definitely be willing to support this. I just want to know the facts so that I can hold the ones accountable. So when we do this, make sure every penny is accounted for. But I think this is a great idea.
Thank you, Alderman.
I would like to answer. The budget director will not be able to tell you how much it's going to bring back. That's part of the part. Until somebody, he can tell you about the dividends that are not being collected now, maybe, but different times your budget is fluid. So you won't know. You don't know until somebody else issues a stock option. Then you'll find out. We didn't know that Ralston Purina was going to do that stock option. They got that through on a pretense to me. I think they ought to be made to pay the money back. Okay, but we didn't have any idea. We don't know when you're going to issue a stock option or a dividend. So therefore, the budget director can't say. He can say an estimate of what we're not getting right now. Maybe if they keep records. When I was trying to find out if they kept records, because they no longer was taxing it, they couldn't give me the records that I wanted, because that's the first thing I went to. This is not, like I said, not the first time I've sought to do this. But and also, I know he was working for ENA, that two of the three people had supported it, and that would have been our former president and our former mayor, both of the former mayors. So they weren't in a big hurry for us to get any information about that. I don't care if we get 50 cents back, $1, $5. There's a fairness. You talk about the push for 15. I also was part of the push for 15. I have always been about a fairness. That's what I'm about down at this Board of Aldermen. Is it fair? Are we treating people fairly? I can much more pay that little money that I get on dividends than somebody who is living from paycheck to paycheck. And I'm not rich, but I am comfortable, okay? So why are you giving this exemption? If anything, if I was gonna support an exemption, it would be to the people who make below a certain amount of money. This makes no sense at all. This was a sweetheart deal. And as I said before, I want you to read all those articles, and then you'll see that that's why I made you a bullet point. You'll see each of these bullet points comes from those articles, okay? And also, I was there. So we were listening to it. And just to let you know, actually, Alderman Conway and I got elected within 5 months of each other. So we were really good, tight friends for many, many years, because Geraldine Osborne was the 15th Ward alderwoman. She used to run the budget. She made the mayors cry because she knew the budget backwards and forward. And so we were so in awe of her that she had a group of people that when Geraldine Osborne told us something, she taught us how to read that budget. So we were cohorts. And also, all three of us, the three lawyers, knew there's no way why are you pushing a bill that would only save $350,000? That didn't make sense. Okay, so I'm saying that we were fooled, and we've been fooled before. There's some other, in there, I think there's some other companies that have also had stock options since then that would have been money. If it's 1.77, almost $2 million right there, I'll take it, okay? If there are other companies that got that kind of thing, I'll take it. And the whole thing about we're gonna get .coms to come was just not true.
What is your question?
Okay. Could you just explain, not, I guess the role of the collector revenue part of it? That's what I was going to ask.
So the collective revenue collects our revenue.
Well,
Okay, earning tax is one of the things that we get, okay? And so they sued the collective revenue because, and that's why I gave you the actual lawsuit, because they said he had no right to collect revenue on earnings tax. And so, as I said before, Kansas City and St. Louis are the only two cities that have a earnings tax. Kansas City didn't even have to fight it because we went through the whole fight, won it, and so they were good, okay? Like I said, it went all the way to the appeals court, the Eighth Circuit, I think. It didn't just stop here at local. It went to the appeals court. They absolutely lost on every point. So that also doesn't make any sense. Why take something to court? That would be like SEIU taking something to court and winning, and then you guys say, well, okay, let's get rid of our 15. We really don't need to fight for 15. 10 is good enough. That's what happened with that. But the collective revenue collects. That's what he was doing. And they took him to court, they being Ralston, to say he had no right to collect that.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Aldrich. Okay, Alderman Tyus, I want to echo gratitude for bringing this issue before us. I know this is an issue that you have talked about down here at the floor, on the floor of the Board of Aldermen for as long as I have been in office. And I'm always happy to have a hearing. You know, you may remember we reached out to you if you wanted to have a hearing to be asked. And so we're more than willing to consider this issue and move this forward. I do have a couple of questions on a technical side of things. One of which is, I'll just kind of go through them. You know, it's not clear to me when this would go into effect. In that, you know, what year's earnings tax, what year's stock option tax would be applied, how we would get the word out to folks that this is now law, that they would have to comply with this, and how the collector of revenue would enforce it. Those are pieces from a technical side of things that I think we may want to have the collector here to describe how he would do that. So from the sort of just barely technical side, I think given that we're sort of like at the very, very end here, and I'm looking at Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, I did want to have a vote before 11:30. We can put this on the side and come back, but I think probably more effective, considering we go down on the 15th and go right back in on the 16th. You have my commitment to have hearings right at the beginning of next session if we want to convene the collector and maybe have, I would like to have some mechanism to let the public know that, you know, that we're doing this once it goes into effect. So if it, like, I don't even know what it could look like, but if folks that have been enjoying this exemption for, since I looked it up, 2001,
23 years,
would now have to adjust how they're, to start paying that, we have to somehow let them know, because otherwise it's sort of, the earnings tax is somewhat on your honor system on that way, in that way, unless, you know, there's an audit or that sort of. So I want to make sure we have those things in place to make it as effective as possible. Would you be amenable to working with the committee here to just convene a meeting, say April, and then get those things kind of ironed out, those last bit of questions?
I will invite the collective revenue. I will invite the budget director. I'll invite the comptroller. I can answer those questions. This would be an emergency clause. It would go into effect immediately. Anything that we had not collected would, just like we did before. This is just reversing. We were collecting the income, and then when that got passed, we stopped collecting the income. So, and also what happens is people find out because they stop, the collective revenue gets a copy of this. Okay. They stop collecting it. They stop levying it. So, but I hear you. Sometimes I forget. I've been down here so long.
Right.
That it's in my head. Okay.
But my question would be, if we pass this in April, this is in the middle of the year. Does it apply to 2024 stock options? Only then apply to 2025 stock options? Where is it proactive or prorated or that sort of thing? So, do you know the answer to that?
So the answer is it would not apply to anything that is already, people didn't pay on it. But if, you know, dividends don't come just one big thing, you know. So when you get your dividends, I get some of my dividends monthly or quarterly or whatever. So it will apply not to the ones that this law wasn't passed, it would apply to the ones afterwards.
Okay.
But
So-
we can also make that very clear when we want this. It doesn't have to be an emergency clause. It can be changed. I did not expect that this was going to come out of the committee because I know people start running around, but I do want you all to be comfortable in knowing it's the fair thing to do. And then also I wanted to send it to Jeff City if I could have, that look, we are serious. Please don't mess with our earnings tax. And if we don't watch out, we're going to have people start to vote to get rid of our earnings tax. And then I think that will be a
No, I think that's absolutely, this is a huge problem. The thing from my perspective, I'll just be kind of transparent here. I would like to see like it clearly spelled out what date this would go into effect so that, as you're pointing out, dividends after that point, this would be applied to, and kind of what our plan for public awareness, engagement, that sort of thing. There needs to be some literature in the Collector of Revenue's office. There needs to be some, public-facing information about this that we can put together, and we need to direct those departments to do that. So if you're okay with this, Alderwoman, what we'll do is hold it for right now, and then commit as a committee to consider this similar bill introduced for the next session, and then continue the hearings in April.
And I would say you're being very good because when we passed this, it was only done for Ralston Purina. The other people just got a benefit from it. It was never done for the small investors. That little bit of money usually doesn't make a big difference, okay?
Well, I can say as somebody who is now who represents Purina and their campus, they have been great partners with the community on a lot of different fronts. I'm really grateful for their continued headquarters here in the city of St. Louis and their commitment to they give to Ruds. I don't know, I didn't know them back in 2021, but I can say right now they've been a great neighborhood partner. So with that, Alderwoman, I really appreciate your flexibility. I appreciate the concept and the history here, and we will reconvene in April on this issue.
I will have the board bill. It'll be my first board produced because I'm going to bring it back every year. And if I have to, I'll come to Jefferson City and agree with them and say, well, get rid of our property, our earnings tax. Because if we're not going to do it fairly, and I'm a good person to do it, and bring them all of this information, then we shouldn't have it, and we should have to deal with it because this is not right.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one quick thing I'd like to add to the list that on this, and that would be other cities that have earnings taxes and whether or not this is part of that. I think you're spot on. I think that we're kind of an anomaly in that regard. And
No, it's only us in Kansas City and Missouri. Kansas City never exempted theirs.
That's what I mean. As far as having putting us, being able to share that with the committee and the general public, that we're an anomaly by having this exemption as we kind of consider eliminating it. So thank you, Alderwoman.
Thank you. Read the articles. You'll see that they really, Riverfront Times does a great job with it.
Sarah Fensky back in 2016. Okay. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, you are now recognized. And DJ Wilson.
Thank you so much. Is Alderwoman Schweitzer still on?
She had to have.
Because I know you were trying. Okay.
I am
Woman
stay
is
as
still
long
here.
as I possibly can. This is an important vote. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, do you have an amendment for us?
We did not, because we identified, and I hope that it will appease you and Alderwoman Boyd, which I also reached out to on the break. And the information that Alderwoman Boyd shared with me came directly from the what's covered under Title VII, which is covered under line 5 in the bill. So just to be clear for people that are watching, it makes it illegal for employers to allow anyone to be sexually harassed at work or anyone else, regardless of sex, gender, or sexual orientation, or unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of sexual nature. Everyone, regardless of gender, is protected from sexual discrimination also under Title VII. So again, documentation relating to any violations of state or federal laws relating to workplace discrimination, which I did take into consideration your note as well, Chairwoman Spencer, about possibly adding discrimination, but I think this workplace discrimination covers that. And again, those are all under and can be easily traced back to the Missouri Rights Human Act and Title VII.
Okay. So Alderwoman, with that, do we have any questions from the committee of the sponsor?
I guess my one question, thank you for doing that follow-up. I too have been a part of that workforce that is always given extra responsibilities, less employees. So is it a way we can look at the ratio of responsibilities or something? Because I just think that's really something to look at, and maybe not in this bill, but maybe down the line to start focusing on, the people in housekeeping, they have one floor and now they have 2 floors and it's still the one person. So I guess I'm just really thinking about that.
Thank you so much, Alderwoman Boyd. I think that is a great idea, and I think that I would be willing to work on you with a piece of legislation that would impact that here for the city of St. Louis, possibly not even just for our janitors and security workers. So please count me in on your work on that when you pick that up. I just want to reiterate that this is some work that we all believe in, and I know we all believe in, but it's more of an emphasis on quality over cost here as we in our hiring practices for the city of St. Louis. So again, I thank you all, and if there aren't any other additional questions, I ask for your favorable consideration and do pass the recommendation on Board Bill 234.
I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 234.
I'd like to make a motion that we do pass Board Bill 234 with a do pass recommendation.
With that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier,
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich,
Aye.
Chair Spencer.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
Thank you all, and thank you all for allowing us to do this work and working together as usual.
Thank
Have
you
a blessed day.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Have a safe flight.
Safe travels.
and with that, I'll entertain. Well, actually, I received word from Alderman Oldenburg that his a request for his absence to be excused. So I will recognize that. We have no written testimony, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Previous rule.
Hearing no objections, we are adjourned.